The country's second largest lake has virtually vanished. It's all dried up. So what happened?
About 71% of the Earth's surface is covered in water. Earth is most definitely a wet planet, and the view from space clearly displays the dominance that water has over land. These oceans, rivers, and seas provide a variety of resources to inhabitants across the globe. So it's no wonder why water is one of the greatest resources our planet has to offer. Unfortunately, our planet is losing water at an alarming rate, and seas are drying up across the world. These water masses rely heavily on precipitation, and those situated in wetter regions are more of a permanent fixture. Then there are those lakes which are in drier locations and are more sensitive to seasonal changes. Combine that with the loss of water due to human activities, and the result is a significant loss of water. Stay tuned to this video as we closely examine 7 seas that have dried up, the seas that will no longer exist.
Climate change or something else? That's the ecological mystery shaping up in Bolivia.
At number 7, Lake Pupo. Located in Bolivia, this lake was the second largest body of water in the country. While it was only around 8 to 10 feet in depth, the lake covered roughly 977 square miles. However, since the 1990s, the evaporation rate of the lake began to triple as global warming brought heightened temperatures to the region. Without sufficient rainfall to the region, this body of water began to severely diminish. The shrinking of Lake Pupo resulted in catastrophic consequences for the region's flora and fauna, along with its residents, who made a living by fishing in the lake. By December 2015, the lake had completely dried up due to the combined effects of climate change, severe droughts, and sediment buildup as a result of the local mining industry. With the disappearance of Lake Pupo came the disappearance of many of its residents. Today, the former body of water is more reminiscent of a barren land instead of a once thriving lake.
One of Australia's most spectacular sights, the rare greening of our red central deserts.
At number 6, Lake Eyre. Sitting in south-central Australia, Lake Eyre has a total area of over 4,000 square miles. The issue with this particular lake is that the water which feeds it has been evaporating at an alarming rate. The lake is kept high by an internal continental drainage basin, but evaporation rates in the region are so high that most of the rivers in the basin dry up before reaching the lake. Therefore, the lake can only reach its highest levels during flood season. And with rainfalls in the region only reaching about 5 inches per year, it completely fills on average about twice in a century. Therefore, Lake Eyre is only properly fed when they are in flood stage after a heavy rain season. With such low levels of precipitation, it's no wonder this body of water is on our list. Are you wondering where some of the more recognizable lakes are on this list? Don't leave just yet because we have 5 more to go, and I'm willing to bet yours is coming up soon.
And part of the infrastructure for that project still exists deep below Lake Mead.
At number 5, Lake Mead. The only sea located in the United States comes in at our number 5 spot. Lake Mead is the reservoir of the famous Hoover Dam. The lake was formed by damming the Colorado River and was at one time one of the largest man-made lakes in the world. Lake Mead extended 115 miles upstream, was up to 10 miles in width, and had a capacity of over 31 million acre-feet and a whopping 550 miles of shoreline. It was quite impressive in size. However, due to a multi-year drought in the Southwest during the early 21st century, satellite images have shown that the water levels dropped some 120 feet in a 5-year span. Recent studies show that Lake Mead will drop another 35 feet by the year 2026. Scientists predict that this body of water will never recover.
Now the water is scarce and we need 10 trips to catch half the previous amount.
At number 4, Lake Chad. This sea was ranked as one of the largest bodies of water in Africa. The water levels of Lake Chad vary a great deal due to precipitation, and its surface area usually reaches its maximum in late October or early November and will shrink by more than half that amount by late April or early May. The volume of the lake is heavily reflected upon by local precipitation and the discharge of its catchment area. The lake is fed chiefly by the Shari Lagoon River System, a river system which accounts for about 4/5 of the inflow. Unfortunately, it is during the low-level months that the lake is separated by a low ridge in the center. The ridge is formed during a drought in the early 20th century, and it's because of this drought that Lake Chad is at times completely separated. The distinction in the water levels goes from covering an astonishing 6,875 square miles to a mere 580 square miles in the early 21st century. Quite a separation, wouldn't you say?
Scientists define what's happened to Lake Ermia as nothing short of an environmental disaster, but they warn it could get even worse.
At number 3, Lake Ermia. Having an elevation of over 4,000 feet above sea level and covering up to 2,300 square miles, Lake Ermia was known to be the largest lake in the Middle East. What is unfortunate about Lake Ermia is the waters have no outlet and have a high saline content. The lake is 1/4 as salty as the Dead Sea. Since the late 1960s, this body of water has become a wetland protected region, and the government has been making efforts to increase the area's wildlife. However, Lake Ermia's surface area has diminished by nearly 90% since the 1970s to a mere 230 square miles. This is a direct result from the damming of the rivers that flow into the lake. Efforts continue to be made to salvage this lake and provide adequate resources for the wildlife. Our next 2 C's on this list could easily go back and forth between the top spots. Let's take a look at these 2 famous bodies of water. At number 2, the Erol Sea. One of the more famous of these dried-up lakes would have to be the Erol Sea. Located between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, this sea was at one time the world's 4th largest body of inland water. Towards the late 1980s, this sea had lost more than half its volume of water that it had dating back to the pre-1960s. Due to the loss of water, the salt and mineral content became very high and made drinking the water a safety issue. If that wasn't enough for the local population to suffer, the nearby fishing industry was destroyed when over half the fish population in the lake was killed off from the rising salt and mineral content. Early reasons for the loss of lake water was evaporation, but other contributing factors would arise in the second part of the 20th century. It was during this time that other bodies of water which helped feed the Erol Sea were diverted elsewhere for the purposes of irrigation. When looking at the coastline of the Erol Sea in 1960 compared to now, one can see that it resembles more of a small pond versus a once thriving body of water. And that brings us to number 1 body of water that will no longer exist. While the previous lakes on this list have garnered much attention, none are as famous as the one coming up. Thanks for sticking with the video, and let's dive headfirst into our top spot.
Basically, you see the layers.
You see literally the layers.
Yeah.
Thousands of years.
At number 1, the Dead Sea. Situated between the countries of Israel and Jordan in southwestern Asia, the Dead Sea, or Salt Sea as some call it, is known to people across the world. This famous body of water has the lowest elevation and is the lowest body of water on the surface of Earth. Beginning in the 1960s, its neighboring countries began diverting much of the Jordan River's flow from the Dead Sea and increased the use of the lake's water for commercial purposes. The result was a catastrophic drop in the Dead Sea's water level. Around 2015 or so, the lake level was more than 100 feet below the mid-20th century figure, which was close to 1,400 feet below sea level. If this wasn't disastrous enough, the lake would continue to drop by about 3 additional feet each year. Local governments would then propose reducing the amount of diverted water along with a proposal of canals that would deliver much-needed water to the Dead Sea. A particular project, which received approval from both sides in 2015, would consist of the construction of a canal northward of the Red Sea. The plan, which would include necessary desalination, would deliver large quantities of brine to the lake. However, this suggestion was met with skepticism and opposition from environmentalists, who thought the mixing of water from multiple sources would be harmful. The future of this world-famous lake remains a question for all. The Dead Sea or the Erol Sea? Which of these famous locations lands as your number 1? Do you have one of the other bodies of water deserving as much attention as the Dead Sea? Is there a sea that should be higher on this list? Is there anything you think we should all be doing to save these historic locales? Or is it out of our hands altogether? We would love to hear your thoughts on this hot topic in the comments down below. We look forward to hearing your thoughts. And before you go, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you're notified when we post more great content like this. Thanks for tuning in.